I was born into a family. Mother and dad were both champion cowgirl and cowboy contestants. My dad was a bulldogger and a saddle bronc rider, and my mother rode relay races, did trick riding and girls saddle bronc riding. And that was Tad Lucas and Buck Lucas, and they were both from Nebraska, but they did not meet in Nebraska. They met in Fort Worth, where they had both kind of worked their way through the rodeos and Wild West shows. Fort Worth was known as the first indoor rodeo and had good prizes there. So they had come there to try out, see what they could do, and that's where they met. My mother was actually riding a bronc, and when she handed her reins to the pickup man, he dropped it, and so she was going to bail off, and my dad jumped up from the wall and ran out and caught her. And it's a true story, and Mother used to just say, it really did happen, but it sounds so hokey.
So did both of your...
My mother left home at about age 19. She had seen...
Now, wasn't she one of several?
She was the 24th child of my grandfather.
Oh, my heavens.
And she had never seen a rodeo or a Wild West show, but one of her brothers took her to the state fair where they had one, and she saw Prairie Rose Henderson ride a bronc, and she knew that that's what she wanted to do. And it wasn't long before she left home and got her brother to go with her, and they found the closest Wild West show, and from then on she started out riding racehorses and steers, and then just as she finally hooked up with a really big Wild West show. It was Frank Halfley and Mamie, their show, and they went to Old Mexico, and she rode a wild Mexican steer every day at that show.
What about your father?
He homesteaded a ranch. After he was served in World War I and homesteaded a ranch in Wyoming, and there wasn't a lot to do on the ranch, and he'd ride over to the nearest rodeo he'd hear about or something, and he was pretty good, and so he just got where he'd go a little further all the time.
Yeah, for my notes here, he won the steer. He was steer wrestling champion in 1924.
International. They had a rodeo in London, and he was at that time. Mother was still a rookie, and she did win some prize money there, but Dad actually won the international trophy.
So when after their marriage and
they got married just before they went to London.
Did they?
And then they settled in Fort Worth. And Fort Worth was picked out because it was better weather. And Mother said she would not go back to Nebraska or to Wyoming. She was tired of the snow country. So my dad gave up that dream, and they settled in Fort Worth and bought a little property. And Fort Worth, you could go anywhere on the train in Fort Worth. It was a hub.
Long way.
And then when I came along, my mother by that time had worked her way into being a world's champion cowgirl, and she was actually working on winning the MGM trophy. You had to win it 3 times. You had to have your name on it 3 times, and she had it on there once. And then when I was expected, Dad insisted she didn't try out that year.
Now I understand when you came along, though, Mitzi, you only weighed a couple of pounds.
I was a preemie, what they called now premature, and I weighed 2.5 pounds. And doctor said, Tad, she's not going to make it. She's just too little. And they didn't know my mom. She took me home in a shoebox that was filled with a hot water bottle and cotton, and that was my little bed. And my aunt came, one of her sisters came to live with us, and they said I wasn't sickly at all, and I was just little.
You have siblings? Well, now when you got to school age, what?
Then I would stay with my aunt.
There in Fort Worth?
She lived in Fort Worth, and she had married by then, and I'd always, Mother wouldn't have. That was a sad time for me, because from the time I was months old, I traveled with my parents, and I just loved it. And I knew all the hotels and special cities and everything, and when I had to stay home, it was a pretty bitter pill. So I wasn't.
You had a lot of babysitters though when you were out on the road.
I sure did. They were all like aunts and uncles. Some of those world champion cowgirls you read about now they were my aunts. And
well, when did you start?
Well, I started riding. Mother was, as I say, she was world champion cowgirl, and there was a big rodeo in Chicago. It was a World's Fair actually, and she was doing a trick she'd done hundreds of times. It was called going under the belly of the horse, and this was something she could do so easy, but for some reason she missed the strap and dropped down a little bit, and the horse caught her with his feet and just tumbled her and shattered her arm. And it was one of the days before miracle drugs like penicillin or something, so she really had her arm was in a cast 3 years. And they grafted bones out of her legs and out of her other arm, and just really, she had a tough time with it. But the doctors all said, "Now, Tad, you've got no strength in this arm. We can get it to knit back a little bit, but you don't want to try to ride or anything." Well, she didn't pay any attention to that. There's things I can do with a cast on my arm.
So how old were you when this
happened? I was 6.
Did you see this accident?
No, I was home, but anyway, she got to thinking about it, and she'd always contested, but the contests were getting fewer and farther between. So they were doing a lot of contract where you were paid for your event, and she knew she could do some strap work and some tricks on top of the saddle, and with one arm, and so she said, "I'll just get Mitzi to do the other tricks." And so I was thrilled to death. I was in the act.
So you had already been prompted?
Oh, well, I had always, that's what I did as a little girl, was play around on the horse all the time. And
the horse was your babysitter, too.
That's right. Horse was my babysitter, and we tried out all the straps before I was old enough to walk, and so I knew how to do those tricks. I just hadn't professed them, in the arena. And so, Mother, my first show was Pueblo, Colorado.
Do you remember
everything about? Everything. Yeah.
Well, tell us about what went through you when you.
I rode one of Mother's horses, which I didn't have a pony. I rode her horses, used her saddle, and my horse's name was Moon Mullins, and Mother got me all dressed up in little velvet pants and boots and a satin shirt and a huge bow on the top of my head. Shirley Temple curls. This wasn't me, but this was for the arena, and I sure hated that bow. And so to keep me clean and straight, she told the groom, she said, "Blackie, you take Mitzi around the grounds." I think it might have been a state fair, and don't let her get dirty, and then you be back at such and such a time for the event. And I said, "Can I have some ice cream?" And she said, "Oh, okay, you can have some ice cream, but don't get it on you." And so we got the ice cream cone, and it happened to be a cone that had 3 little scoop holes, So I was eating it, and people were saying, "Oh, look at the cute little girl. Can I buy you an ice cream cone?" And pretty soon I'd eaten quite a few of them. And by the time Blackie got me back, I didn't feel so good. Well, I don't feel good at all. Well, you've got to feel good. But the show went on. I made it.
Cowgirl up and go on.
I did, and I don't know, that stuck it. I know. I think about it. Mother must have been horrified that I might not be able to go on, because she was always ready. and performed her best when she got in the arena. You know, she wouldn't have let a little ice cream bother her.
So that
but I
started
was
you on your
we
way,
she and I were an act for 20 years.